Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There are 5 children in this book. Augustus Gloop, a greedy boy. Greedy, жадный, a greedy boy. Veruca Salt, a girl who is spoiled by her parents. Spoiled, избалованный. A girl who is spoiled by her parents. Violet Beauregarde, a girl who chews all day long. To chew, жевать. A girl who chews all day long. Mike TV, a boy who does nothing but watch television. And Charlie Bucket, the hero. Chapter 1. Here comes Charlie. We will start with the helpful words. Grown up, взрослый человек. Grown up. Edge, окраина, edge. Draft, сквозняк, draft. To screw, завинчивать, to screw. A cap, крышка тюбика, a cap. To afford, позволять себе, to afford. To look forward to, с нетерпением ждать чего-либо, to look forward to. Helping, порция, helping. To starve, голодать, to starve. Tummy, живот, tummy. Share, доля, share. Desperately, очень отчаянно, desperately. Feeling, плотный, сытный, feeling. Shop window, витрина магазина, shop window. To munch, жевать, to munch. Greedily, жадно, greedily, жадно. Torture, мучение, torture. To save up, беречь, приберегать, to save up. Treasure, хранить, to treasure. Nibble, чуточка, капелька, nibble. Enormous, огромный, enormous. To sniff, or a sniff, вдох, втягивание носом, sniff. These 2 very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. And these 2 very old people are the father and mother of Mrs. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket. This is Mrs. Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket. This is Charlie. How do you do? And how do you do? And how do you do again? He is pleased to meet you. The whole of this family, the 6 grown-ups, count them, and little Charlie Bucket, lived together in a small wooden house on the edge of a great town. The house wasn't large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only 1 bed. The bed was given to the 4 old grandparents because they were so old and tired. They were so tired they never go out of it. Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine on this side, Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on this side. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room upon mattresses on the floor. In the summertime this wasn't too bad, but in winter freezing cold drafts blew across the floor all night long, and it was awful. There was no chance for them to buy a better house, or even 1 more bed to sleep in. They were too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. He worked in a factory where he all day long screwed the little caps onto the tops of the tubes of toothpaste after the tubes had been filled. But a toothpaste cap screwer is never paid very much money, and poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked and however fast he screwed on the caps, could never make enough to buy on 1/2 of the things that so large a family needed. There wasn't even enough money to buy proper food for them all. The only meals they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, boiled potatoes and cabbage for lunch, and cabbage soup for supper. Sundays were a bit better. They all looked forward to Sundays because then, although they had exactly the same, everyone was allowed a second helping. The Buckets, of course, didn't starve, but every one of them had a horrible empty feeling in their tummies. Charlie felt it worst of all, and although his father and mother often went without their own share of lunch or supper so that they could give it to him, it still wasn't enough for a growing boy. He desperately wanted something more filling and satisfying than cabbage and cabbage soup. The one thing he wanted more than anything else was chocolate. Walking to school in the mornings, Charlie could see chocolate in the shop windows, and he would stop and stare and press his nose against the glass, his mouth watering like mad. Many times a day he would see other children taking bars of chocolate out of their pockets and munching them greedily, and that, of course, was real torture. Only once a year on his birthday, Charlie Bucket tasted a bit of chocolate. The whole family saved up their money for that special occasion, and when the great day arrived, Charlie was always presented with one small chocolate bar to eat all by himself. And each time he received it, on those marvelous birthday mornings, he would place it carefully in a small wooden box that he owned and treasure it like a bar of gold. And for the next few days he would allow himself only to look at it, but never to touch it. Then at last, when he could stand it no longer, he would take a tiny nibble, just enough to last it. The next day he would take another tiny nibble, and so on and so on. And in this way Charlie would make his sixpenny bar of birthday chocolate last him for more than a month. But I haven't yet told you about the one awful thing that tortured little Charlie, the lover of chocolate. This thing for him was far worse than seeing bars of chocolate in the shop windows, or watching other children munching chocolate right in front of him. It was the most terrible torturing thing you could imagine, and it was this. In the town itself, actually near the house in which Charlie lived, there was an enormous chocolate factory. Just imagine that. And it wasn't simply an ordinary enormous chocolate factory. It was the largest and most famous in the whole world. It was Wonka's factory, owned by a man called Mr. Willy Wonka, the greatest inventor and maker of chocolates that there has ever been. And what a marvelous place it was! It had huge iron gates leading into it, and a higher wall surrounding it, and smoke coming from its chimneys, and strange sounds coming from deep inside it. And outside the walls, for half a mile around in every direction, there was a heavy, rich smell of chocolate in the air. Twice a day on his way to and from school, little Charlie Bucket had to walk right past the gates of the factory, and every time he went by, he would begin to walk very, very slowly, and he would hold his nose high in the air and take long, deep sniffs of the chocolatey smell all around him. Oh, how he loved that smell! And oh, how he wished he could go inside the factory and see what it was like.